25 years, and I'm the host of the new show, The Entrepreneurial Web. Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern Time for insights and stories on the nuances of running small business right here on Fridays at noon, talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Do you feel uninformed about menopause and how it impacts on your life? Hi, I'm Pat Duckworth, women's health strategist and host of the Hot Women Rock radio show, empowering women leaders at menopause. Join me every Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. UK time on talkradio.nyc for interviews with inspirational women who will share their top tips to rock your world.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Howdy, I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Gateway to the Smokies. It airs on talkradio.nyc every Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 7. Every episode is dedicated to memorable experiences in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and surrounding areas. This show features experts and locals who expound upon the richness of culture, history, and adventure that awaits you in the Smokies. Tune in every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 7 on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Good evening. Welcome to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauver. I'm an employment law and business law attorney, and I host this weekly live talk radio show and this video broadcast every Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Talk Radio NYC, where I have interesting guests who discuss some of the compelling and novel employment and business issues that companies and business owners are facing in all industries during these challenging times. And so in that spirit, I'd like to welcome our very engaging guest tonight, Miss Lisa Snow. Lisa is the president and founder of On the Mend Customized Fitness and Massage. And Lisa, it's great to have you here this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, a pleasure. So you got the mute button. A lot of guests missed that, but you were right on the money there. Excellent. And really good to have you with us tonight. I'm going to just introduce the topic for our listeners, our audience. So I think it's an important one that I think employers and employees can really relate to. And then I'll give you a proper introduction as well, and we can get into our conversations this evening. All right. So my our topic tonight is called Virtual Employee Wellness, Balance and Health During COVID. I think a really crucial topic for today's day and age. And really what we're talking about, folks, is that COVID-19 has done quite a number on many people's physical and mental health, including employees. And with the growing shift towards a remote workforce, the question becomes, how can employers maintain wellness and fitness programs tailored to overall employee well-being What are some practical and legal considerations for employers when organizing wellness programs virtually for their employees? So tune in tonight when my guest, Lisa Snow, and I will discuss this topic in depth. We'll discuss some tips, techniques, and some solutions to the issue of maintaining employee wellness and health. And so with that, Lisa, I want to also introduce you more properly, your background and such. And as I've mentioned, my guest this evening is Lisa Snow. Lisa is a speaker, a personal trainer, and employee wellness coordinator. Lisa is the founder of On the Mend Customized Fitness and Massage. And for over a dozen years, she and her company have successfully trained everyone from corporate executives to the elderly and people with disabilities. On the Mend Customized Fitness and Massage also provides team building through wellness, lunch and learn talks, chair massage, fitness and yoga classes, both on-site and via Zoom. So whether your staff is fully remote or back in the office, it's really time to feel like a team again. Lisa is a graduate of NYU, and she is certified by the American Council on Exercise, National Strength and Conditioning Association, as well as the National Personal Training Institute. Lisa is also a columnist for Neighborhood Trainers, and she lectures at law firms, medical offices, and businesses throughout New York City and the tri-state area. So Lisa, that's quite an interesting array of background. You must be keeping pretty busy these days, although on the wellness front.
Yeah, I think health and wellness is on everyone's mind. It's the beginning of every conversation. Every time you catch up with someone you haven't seen in a while, it's, are your friends and family okay? How is your staff doing? How are you feeling? So it's completely changed the conversation.
Absolutely. I think it's always been an important topic for employees and employers alike, in business and in one's personal life. But I think with the hit of COVID, the way it's impacted all of our health, and our fatigue and exhaustion and the stress of it, I think it's become even more talked about and perhaps more to the forefront of people's minds, as you mentioned, alluded to. Yeah. Well, I'd like to ask you a first question, if I may, which is basically if you can, Lisa, tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself. For example, what prompted you to found your company to create On the Mend Customized Fitness and Massage?
Many moons ago, I was a gymnast, and I had so many friends who were phenomenal athletes who had really unhealthy parents. And I watched friends' parents go through cancer and heart disease and everything you can imagine. And clearly those things are beyond their control. But in addition to that, most of them weren't really taking care of themselves. They were stressed out, they weren't active, they weren't eating well. And I would always hear them say things like, I'm tired, I'm busy, I'm not motivated. And really, when people say those things, what they mean most of the time is not, I don't have time. It's, I feel like fitness is for someone else. I feel like it's for athletes or people who already have energy. It's not for me.
I see.
And fast forward a few years, I had gone to financial planning school. I was working on Wall Street, where, surprise, surprise, I had lots of stressed out coworkers with health challenges, didn't always have a great self-care routine. And I was just blown away to hear, these very sophisticated professionals saying the exact same things that the sports moms and dads did, right? I'm busy, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I don't have time. And I really believe it's the same thing, right? They're looking at every gym ad, and every ad looks like a pro athlete, and they're not a pro athlete, and they feel like it's not for them. So really wanted to make fitness and wellness more accessible, especially for those overwhelmed, busy professionals.
Okay.
So now we work with them one-on-one. And when we do employee wellness programs, it's the exact same people, but in groups. It's the people who are super successful, they're super focused at work, and sometimes they're not so focused on their own health.
I see. It's interesting, isn't it? It's like how sometimes our own experiences when we're younger, or those of people close to us, like your parents or your friends' parents, I should say, like the generation, hearing about their perhaps a problem they're having, an issue, knowing that like, you might have the means to help them solve it can be an interesting motivator to start a company. I think that was an interesting point you made, along with the point that, you were hearing the same, I guess, type of perhaps rationalizations or perhaps maybe reasons given. I don't want to say excuses because that has a negative connotation, but maybe excuses, if you call it what it will, is that people are thinking they don't have the time, or that fitness is out of reach. I hear out of reach because of time, out of reach because I'm not, Arnold Schwarzenegger, so therefore I have no business being in a gym, even though in order to even get remotely in shape, you have to be at the gym or somewhere doing exercise. So interesting to hear your perspective.
Yeah, and everyone feels they're busy, but a lot of our clients, both on the one-on-one side and on the employee wellness side, many of them have an 80-hour week. And for people who've never done that themselves or never led teams that were doing that, 80 hours is like 13 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
So everyone feels like they don't have time to get to the gym, but these folks literally don't have time to get to the gym. So we try to make that more doable and fit that into the nooks and crannies of their schedules.
Interesting. So you have that contingency of clients who generally are pressed for time more than the 40-hour week, the actual 70 or 80-hour week, which is definitely, that's, you think about it, as you mentioned, if you break it out into days and just how much time is spent, not to mention if pre-COVID commuting to and from work, or even now in hybrid situations, or even if you work from home, just that many hours is quite a lot. Yeah.
Right. Once you add that commute time, you could really be talking about a 15-hour day.
Which is interesting because I feel like what you're saying here kind of segues into my next question, and maybe even answers a part of it, which is, what are at least some common factors that you believe contribute to an unhealthy employee lifestyle at the workplace? You mentioned one, but what are some other maybe factors that factor in?
Yeah, a big one is continuous sitting. And clearly someone who's working a job where they're paid to think, right? Accountants, attorneys, engineers, they're not going to spend, 15 hours a day on a walking desk. And I don't think they should, but people need to stand up and move, right? So maybe it's just getting up for 2 minutes at the end of an hour. And that's something that work from home has really impacted, because in the past, even people who, if you ask them, would say, I don't exercise, really did. You might not have been going to a workout class, but they were walking to lunch. They were walking to Starbucks. If you're working from home, you're walking from your home desk, that might be in a living room or a study, to your kitchen. You're not walking blocks down the street to a coffee shop. So really putting that intention and reminders, whether that's reminders in your phone or whether it's a sticky note, to just get up and move around for a couple of minutes. Another big thing is dehydration. I've even had clients say, I'm too busy to drink water, right? And what they're saying is, I'm too busy to get up and do things. It's like, well, put the water by your desk, right? But you have to plan that. Another big factor to unhealthy workplaces is just lack of communication. So many managers who were superstars in person really struggled for that first 6 months or a year of lockdown. How do I manage people remotely? And a big cause of stress and anxiety is teams feeling like they don't know what the goals are, or they don't know what their manager really wants. And so people are kind of finding that new equilibrium of how to communicate with teams. And then the biggest thing with both remote and hybrid teams is just isolation. Right? Whether you're home 5 days a week or you're in the office 3 days and home 2 days, even when you're in the office, more likely to be wearing a mask, you're more likely to be sitting distance from other people, less likely to be doing kind of group lunches or group activities with other people. So it's just incredibly isolating. And for employees that live alone, that's a whole other level of isolation. So just having watching managers become more aware of that's been really encouraging.
Yeah, Lisa, it's I think you raised some really good points there, some factors, that you referenced, like the continuous sitting, they're not hydrating, being too busy to drink water. It kind of struck me as interesting. And then the lockdown and isolation. I guess what I'm also hearing maybe from that is a common thread where the stress and the isolation maybe creates some level of anxiety that drives the person to say, I'm too busy to get up and drink water, because it's, this is a cup of water right here, this mug is full of water. It's literally just going like this and going like that. But when we feel anxious, we're like, nope, no time for that. And same thing, I think, with that remote thing you mentioned. It's like people maybe don't think they have time to get up and move around. So I think it's really interesting that you mentioned like these are the factors, but then here's the underlying phenomenon of people being very remote, anxious, maybe there's more depression. I think it's like really maybe perhaps part of this conversation, right, is like, what is the lockdown doing to people's mental health, and how does that impact how they take care of themselves physically?
Absolutely. I think many people who come to a gym or come to a personal trainer and say, I'm not motivated to work out, what they're really saying is, I'm overwhelmed or depressed or anxious, and therefore I can't get motivated to work out. But even for employees who don't have anxiety or don't have depression, I think there's just an overwhelming sense of burnout. And burnout is different than stress. Burnout is more the sense of not being able to visualize how it can change and how it can be better. And, I think the stress has impacted people living alone versus people with young kids very differently. I think if you're alone, it's just, especially during early parts of the lockdown, it was impossible to go to restaurants with people. It was impossible to go to bars with people, coffee shops, interact with people. So that was really isolating. For people with young families, it's not so much isolation because they're surrounded by people that they really like and love, but it's just impossible to focus. You have a young child and maybe a pet, and then the doorbell's ringing because UPS is showing up, and then the phone's ringing while you're also on a Zoom call, and it just becomes so much stress. So it's just about leaders kind of having empathy for both of those situations.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good point there about, and I like your distinction of burnout as opposed to sort of being very stressed, and that kind of feeling sort of a dark cloud that is not going to lift, anytime soon. And how I like your reference of it, how people in the pandemic maybe hit hard, but in different ways. Because as you mentioned, I've known people in the pandemic who were retired when the COVID first hit, and they couldn't see their grandchildren, and they couldn't volunteer. And they were complaining they were very, very bored with nothing to do. And I was, working full time. My wife's working full time. Right, we have our child is now 2.5 almost. He's 2, but he was 7 months old when it started. Like, he was a baby. Daycare shut down immediately. We were with him, and we had the phrase "free time" like didn't exist in our vocabulary. It was just back and forth of childcare and like taking care of him and just trying to rearrange our schedules. And so I definitely hear the difference, and it's hard on each type of person. I think so I think that's an interesting point. And it's funny how time flies. We're actually coming up on our first commercial break in about 30 seconds. I thought rather than ask you another question, why don't we take a break first? We come back and we can talk more about this whole shift in the remote workforce and some of Lisa's great tips for employees out there and employers about maintaining health and wellness. But I'll just briefly say I'm Eric Sauver, host of the show Employment Law Today, and you're listening to Talk Radio NYC. And our guest tonight is Lisa Snow, founder of On the Mend Fitness, customized fitness and massage. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauver. I'm an employment law and business law attorney here tonight with my guest, Lisa Snow. Lisa is the founder of On the Mend Customized Fitness and Massage. She's also a personal trainer. I should note that point as well. And Lisa, once again, it's really great to have you on the show tonight for this interesting topic.
Thanks again for having me. And I think as teams have gone remote and gone hybrid, so many managers are just so stressed out and just wondering, how can I have my employees feel like they still work together? How can I have them feel like they still work here at this firm?
Right.
I care about them. I'm worried about them, but how did they know that I actually am concerned?
Yeah. That's a really good point, I think, because people don't know what you're thinking when they're working 30 miles away in their own home. Whereas in the office, they might see you pop in and say hello. And is that an issue you've been finding with some of the employer side of this dilemma these days? Like how they're not able to sort of convey their concern for their employees?
It's so much harder because in person, you're seeing the body language, right? You're seeing, are people up and excited? Are they overwhelmed and slumped over their keyboard? If you're not with them and you're constantly checking up on them, you may be doing it because you're genuinely concerned, but is the employee perceiving that as, they're micromanaging me, they want everything done instantly?
Yeah.
That may not be why you're checking in at all. But again, if it's just a text message, all of that meaning of your tone of voice is lost.
Yes.
And Zoom certainly helps with that. Zoom's certainly better than emailing or texting, but especially in larger companies and larger teams, if you have 10 or 20 or 50 people on a Zoom meeting, they're only speaking when you're telling them to unmute.
Yep.
Not the same interaction.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I do. I think it's like a really good point, and it's just, there's that loss of human connection, and I hear about companies going fully remote 24/7 with all their employees. It just makes me get pause. I mean, I don't want to judge. Everyone has their own business plan, operations, and if it works for you, it works for you. But it's like I think we're human interaction. We're human social creatures, I should say. We need human interaction, and it's like to have people just completely remote. There's a real loss, isn't there, of connection, of just knowing what someone's thinking. I mean, you can't see, for example, if somebody is nervously picking at their fingernails, twiddling their thumbs, or tapping their feet. Are they anxious? You see maybe from the neck up. Is there an echo in their Zoom, or is that some other issue going on? It's a little hard to tell on the phone or on Zoom. So, but it does actually kind of make me wonder about maybe another question here about the remote workforce, right, during COVID-19. How have you seen this, say, impact some of the maybe existing wellness programs that, let's say like pre-COVID, certain employee health and wellness programs, and people came to the office, in the conference room, downstairs. What's happening now that there's just more remote working?
I think the goals of wellness programs have really changed, and therefore the content has to change. Right. So if you think about the kinds of wellness programs that people were doing before the shutdown that were brilliant back then, Some of them don't make as much sense anymore. Some of them are harder to implement now. So for example, if you lived in the burbs, and as I do, and worked in the city, and your company was giving you a free gym membership before the shutdown, that was a brilliant perk.
Yeah.
It was getting you to be more active. It was getting you to be healthier. It was something you were going to spend money on anyway. So it's helping with your budget.
Sure.
Now with people being so isolated, for a lot of business owners and a lot of team leaders, their goal for the program isn't just to get people to exercise, it's to get employees to spend time together. So if you buy everyone a membership to a chain gym and they all go to 15 different locations, that's not something they're doing together. So then you think about Fitbit or other step trackers. Before the shutdown, getting everyone a Fitbit was a genius idea, right? It's a product that actually works. It's fun. If you have people that are super fit and other people who haven't exercised in 20 years, they can all participate. It's inclusive. But if you think about now, if the goal is to get people to spend time together, having everybody go for a walk by themselves in their own neighborhood, it's getting them active, but it doesn't solve for the team building piece. Right? Or, you know, in the past, getting people together to do a charity walk or a charity run, that makes a lot more sense because they're actually doing it together and it's meaningful and you're giving back to the community.
Yes.
But again, depending on how safe people feel with COVID, are they comfortable doing that now? Like not just based on the official guidance, but have you actually talked to them about how they feel about doing that? So, you know, hopefully a lot of those, you know, charity-based team events will come back sooner than later. But again, that's something that might happen once a year. That's not an ongoing team building program.
So in what you're saying, it's like what I hear maybe is perhaps an important point here, Lisa, that I hear you perhaps saying that wellness and health and wellness and well-being is more than just the exercise. That's one component. But it sounds like to me you're saying that, say there's a social component, a connectivity, connection component, and that's all part of the wellness, right? Mental health, you know, spiritual well-being, social connection, which in the past employers could do with, yoga in the conference room, or a membership to a gym that everyone goes to the same down the block. They see each other at lunchtime, and now it's a good point. I think that collection, that connectivity rather, is sadly sacrificed. And so, well, I guess it makes me think, like, so how do you help some of your clients to say, I'm a business owner right now watching the show, listening tonight, I think I'm saying, wow, I think this is really great information, great stuff. Lisa Snow, great topic. And, you know, how can I, as an employer, like, how can I foster and promote, you know, employee wellness and fitness? How can I do it when people are so remote and working virtually?
So there are definitely things you can invest in, but there are also things you can do that don't cost anything. And the low-hanging fruit is just modeling the behavior that you want employees to have. If the only thing that you share with your team is the work-related stuff you're doing, you may know that you have more of a work-life balance, but they don't know that. If all you talk about is work, they think all you do is work.
Yes.
So if you've done things that are safe, that are within the guidelines to get out of your house, tell your employees what you're doing, right? Maybe you went to an afternoon movie on a weekend when there were only 3 people in the theater. That's probably the most COVID safe thing you could do. Might tell people you're doing that. Or you went out for a run. Tell people you're doing that. It doesn't have to sound like bragging. I know people are always a little afraid to like tell other people what their workouts are. You know, it's not about I ran exactly this amount of minutes or this amount of miles, but just tell people I got out of my front door. I went and jogged. It was nice to see the sunlight. Right. So that's not just telling them, oh, maybe exercise is a thing. You're also telling them, oh, maybe doing stuff other than work is a thing at this firm or at this company.
Right.
And also just find out what they want to do and activities they can do together. So in the thing, a lot of companies were like, well, let's do a happy hour, right? And they really cared. They really invested. They're like, let's send people, you know, a nice bottle of wine. Let's give them a specific time to jump on. That's a cool one-off activity, but happy hours can't be the only thing that you're doing.
Right.
And again, it depends kind of what the age range and life situations of employees are. If you have employees with young kids, they may not want to do a happy hour thing that involves a lot of alcohol if they need a few hours to spend with kids after that.
Sure.
And other employees may love that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about taking the pulse of your team and finding out what they like to do.
It's a really good point. I think it's like an issue that comes up in employment law for me as an employment law attorney. It comes up in business and leadership that, rather than assume that because you like to say, lift weights or run, that's what your team's all going to want to do, ask them what they're interested in. Like, are they interested in, let's say, are they interested in some kind of a group walk together outdoors? Like, are they interested in perhaps like maybe meeting somewhere to do some kind of a hike? And is that safe for them and comfortable? Are there smaller things they can do, around their neighborhood, bike rides and stuff? And I like the idea about modeling behavior too. I think too often we don't think about that, but I've heard leadership people say, if you want to, to really lead by example. And so, like post that picture, on social media, like of you after your bike ride, a little sweaty with the helmet, and everything, and the bike shirt, or just share what you're doing. It's a really interesting point because people do take cues from one another. And it's part of that workaholic culture too, I think, is that people take cues in the work and the opposite way of being too extreme with work. They see emails flying in at 1:37 a.m. and then like 4:14 a.m. or 10 p.m. people are sending drafts back and forth. It sends that message that this is the norm. And I know from my own personal journey, I used to work 70-hour weeks a long time ago, and I don't do that anymore. I don't want to. I don't need to, thankfully. But even like if I quote unquote needed to, I wouldn't want to. There's just too much. I have a wife, I have a son, and I want to get some kind of rest. And be healthy. So it's interesting to make those observations. Like, how can you set an example around health and fitness?
Absolutely. And if you are running a wellness program that you're investing time and money in, you don't want to make attendance mandatory. That's not a thing. Don't do that.
Good.
But if you're going to pay for it, you as a leader need to participate. So if it's a lunch and learn and you're hosting a speaker, or it's an on-site workout class or a Zoom workout class, if you're not there, I guarantee people notice.
Right. It's interesting, right? You have to lead by also being present in these type of wellness programs and such. I want to talk more with you about some of these wellness programs that we can do virtually, and also more about what you do and some logistics involved. It's time for our commercial break once again. So I'll just say you're listening to Employment Law Today here on Talk Radio NYC. I'm Eric Sauver. My guest tonight, Lisa Snow. When we come back, we'll talk more about ways that employers can further motivate their employees to be healthy, working from home, and what kind of logistical and liability issues might you want to consider when having a remote program. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Howdy, I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Gateway to the Smokies. It airs on talkradio.nyc every Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 7. Every episode is dedicated to memorable experiences in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and surrounding areas. This show features experts and locals who will expound upon the richness of culture, history, and adventure that awaits you in the Smokies. Tune in every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 7 on talkradio.nyc.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauver, employment law, business law attorney, and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauver. My guest tonight, Lisa Snow from On the Mend Customized Fitness and Massaging. And our topic, if you're joining us late, we're talking about employee wellness, particularly virtual employee wellness, like how to keep your team, your staff, your workers, and yourselves balanced, healthy, and well during these challenging COVID times with remote workforces and quarantines and isolation. So I'm joined by my guest, Lisa Snow. As I mentioned, she's a founder of On the Mend Customized Fitness and Massage. And so, Lisa, I want to talk to you about a different related issue, which is some of the perhaps logistical challenges, like maybe say, I could even talk to some of the legal liability issues that an employer should consider if you're organizing remote wellness programs for your staff. Do you want to weigh in on some of the logistics and food for thought there?
This first tip sounds so obvious, but honestly, the most important thing you need to do is make sure the programs are at a time your staff can actually attend.
Yeah.
Back when I worked in corporate, leaders would invest so much money in putting on these incredible health fairs with all these different amazing vendors, and they would run them at times of day when we were stuck in meetings or when we had fires to put out. And if you're really going to invest time and money in this, figure out when your staff can do it. Can they do it on a lunch hour? Can they do it after work? I know from a liability standpoint, some companies would rather have programs done outside work hours.
Yes.
You know, as we discussed, you don't want to make attendance mandatory. Sometimes that's a liability issue, but more importantly, if you make a program mandatory, no one will want to come.
Right.
The minute you tell people they have to do something, even if it's something they normally would love doing, just the fact that you're forcing them to do it makes them like, why do I have to do this? Leave me alone. So you want to make something they can do, not something they have to do.
Right. Like, you must to eat this chocolate cookie, you must take this break, and I insist you have that beer after work. It's like, don't tell me how to run my life, right?
Exactly. So if you are bringing in an outside wellness provider, potentially if they're on Zoom, but especially if they're on site and they're going to be running classes on your premises, you want the wellness providers to add your company as an additional insured to their liability coverage.
Absolutely.
Because 99% chance nothing will go wrong, but it's that 1% that will kill you every time. So they're already investing in that liability coverage. It doesn't, for most wellness providers, it doesn't cost them additional money to add you as an insured. So that's just an easy paperwork thing for them to do.
Right.
And it's also about finding out what your staff's kind of comfort level or risk tolerance is for COVID, right? You have some teams where if it is something in person, they're going to want to wear a mask. They're going to want other people to wear a mask. Some people are not going to want to have to wear a mask, right? So finding out how people feel about that. And also, even if people are back 2 or 3 days in the office, for some teams, doing fitness on Zoom may be easier, because if they're home on Zoom, there's no masks. They're not worried about whether other people are or aren't vaccinated. They're not worried about vax requirements for themselves. So I was wondering if you could weigh in on that a little bit in terms of kind of the safety and the logistics of doing on-site in-person programs.
Absolutely, it's a sure thing. I'm happy to do so, because as you know, I practice employment law and labor law for companies, business owners, and managers and employers. And what I'd say is that you're absolutely right about having added to the insurance liability to cover that in case, especially when you're on site, on premises. So if you're having, let's say, a a wellness fitness yoga class in the conference room or maybe in the downstairs large area, you're on the premises. If it's during work hours, if somebody gets hurt, two things can happen. One, they can try to perhaps file a claim under workers' compensation if they get injured on the job, right? It's part of their work hours. Two, if it's after hours, or say if they have got to have a grave injury, and they're very seriously injured, they might try to file an exception under the grave injury exception and sue you for negligence. So it's like when you're on site, you want to make sure that, people perhaps sign some kind of a liability waiver that maybe says that, they have cleared with their doctors that they're okay to exercise and that they don't have any conditions they know about, that they're responsible, for monitoring their own health and well-being, that if it's too much for them, they could stop anytime. I think that's kind of important, those disclaimers. But keeping it safe in terms of in the office, you want to make sure that there's a lot of just that kind of language involved in people. And it's a tricky thing too. If you have people sign too many long waivers, they'll feel like either this is dangerous or they're just get annoyed and they want to come to the event. So you have to kind of consider that maybe you have some low risk activities, like maybe you don't start with, say, gymnastics for everyone to learn, or rugby. Maybe you start with, low impact yoga and stretching, or having exercise bikes or aerobics class. But I think it's important to note that liability can be a factor. And then of course, when you're working from home on Zoom, interesting thing too, think about, what Lisa said earlier, right? What you said, don't make it mandatory. Unless you want to possibly be covered under workers' compensation, like for an injury. So if you say that every employee must attend this at 1 o'clock to 2, it's mandatory, no ifs, ands, or buts. We're all going to get in shape in this company. We're all going to be healthy. Then it kind of becomes like part of their job duties. And so first of all, you have to compensate them for that time, right? If they're hourly, so because you're making them come. So those are things to consider. And I find most companies make these things kind of optional. And that for the reason you mentioned, which is, anything you make someone you have to do, they don't want to do. Anything you say someone can't do, they'll want to do. So those are my thoughts from a liability point of view.
For sure. And, there's pros and cons to in-person, there's pros and cons to Zoom-based programs, but especially if you have a team where some people may be more fit, other people have potentially not worked out since high school or college or grad school, you want to make sure that at least some of the classes are very beginner friendly. And I find in person, there's always that initial period of people feeling awkward working out in front of their coworkers.
Yeah.
Maybe people haven't seen me in my sweatpants before, or maybe people think I have 2 left feet, or maybe someone else has done a lot of yoga and I've done tons of running and I have a lot of energy, but I'm not flexible. So it's weird to be doing that. So Zoom makes all of that just disappear because they're seeing the instructor, they're not staring at each other, they're not feeling self-conscious. So that would be a very low barrier to entry way to start. And depending on what the setup at the company is, maybe some classes are on Zoom, some are in person. But, on Zoom, no one's having to wear a mask. So that's definitely a plus for some people. Remember to bring a t-shirt because they're home. And even if they're wearing, a beautiful blazer like the one Eric's wearing right now, if they forgot to bring a t-shirt and it's on site, they're like, okay, well, I'll just do this next week. But if they're home, that t-shirt is just 3 feet away. So that's more doable for some teams. And
turn the camera off and just change a new t-shirt. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Eric, what are you seeing in terms of people wearing masks, not wearing masks, companies requiring or not requiring masks for team building or fitness programs, right?
Yeah. It's funny you asked, Lisa. I realized I admitted I forgot to mention that point in my comment to your last point you were making, that question. What I wanted to say right to that point is that keep in mind that from certain New York State up until I think yesterday I think it was, or maybe Friday, had a mask mandate in place that was then renewed. Governor Hochul, Kathy Hochul, is issued an executive order saying that during Omicron, if you're in an indoor space, including workplaces, If they don't have a mandatory vaccination policy, you must wear a mask. It doesn't matter if you're vaccinated, it's what's the policy of the place. Like, so if an employer does not have a mandatory vaccination policy, now if they're in New York City, they have to. Let's say they're in, say, New Rochelle, White Plains, or Long Island, right? And they don't have that vaccination policy in place. You have to require everyone to wear a mask. And so you can be fined if you don't. Now that's been overturned now. A court recently found like that was like overstepping, basically saying we're not criticizing the motivation behind it. We're just saying that since it's not so much of an emergency now, if you want to pass, they have to go to the state legislature. But I think the point is that, at least to your point, be mindful of what the laws say, right? If people are going to come into the office to exercise, if they're anywhere in New York City in the 5 boroughs, they have to be vaccinated to be on premises. That's Mayor de Blasio's signature legislation before he left, and it's been adopted now. So I think you raised some really good points. Don't assume this is going to be the same in person this is not your 2019 or 2018 wellness program, right? It's COVID conscious, COVID cautious,
Yeah, and some of those COVID safety things can actually be fun as opposed to just more frustration and more compliance.
Yeah,
so
right.
If we're doing fitness classes with employees either at home on Zoom or in the office, we give every employee like a little gift box and it gives them something to open. And especially early on in the lockdown, when people couldn't shop, they couldn't go out. It was so magical to watch people actually kind of unwrap a present. But kind of the hidden purpose of it for us is, for a safety standpoint and a liability standpoint, we don't want people having shared equipment. So if they're in a conference room together, we don't want, the same resistance bands for 20 different employees. We want everyone to have their own. It's fun, it's a gift, but they're also not, touching and breathing on all of the same things.
Yeah.
And, in terms of home workouts, everyone was in a different place. You had people who were working out at home and already had a mat or dumbbells. You had people who were trying to work out for the first time at home because they used to go to a gym and they had absolutely nothing at home.
Yep.
There were people who lived in an apartment complex or condo complex that had a gym in the building that was closed due to COVID. And many of those reopened way later than commercial gyms.
Right.
A lot of the co-op boards were a lot more concerned about the liability than kind of the chain gym owners were. So this way, no one's having to worry about, wait, is it the green band? Is it the yellow band? It's like everyone's starting from that same baseline.
Interesting. Yeah, I think, like assessing where people are at goes back to what you said earlier about taking your sort of the finger on the pulse of the situation, what your employees want, what they need, what they can do. Really interesting points there. And, we have another commercial break. Then we'll get into our last question and let you have a chance to wrap up. So folks, stick around. I'm going to ask Lisa when she comes back to tell us more about her company. We've heard a lot about Lisa's insight, intuition, and her valuable feedback. But let's hear about how On the Mend distinguishes itself from other employee wellness companies when we come back to this commercial. Stay tuned. You're going to want to hear this. I'm Eric Sauber, host of Employment Law Today. You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Right back.
Join us every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern for The Mind Behind Leadership, where we focus on what leadership really means to us and to others. We have practical discussions with the CEOs of some of the world's largest companies, owners of small businesses, and experts in psychology and behavior to get that inside track, what to do, what to avoid, and what really happens. Join me, Graham Dobbin, at the new time, 4 p.m. every Tuesday for The Mind Behind Leadership, here live on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Calling all pet lovers.
Pet Avengers, assemble! On the Professionals and Animal Lovers show, we believe the bond between animal lovers is incredibly strong. It mirrors that bond between pets and their owners. Through this program, we come together to learn, educate, and advocate.
Join us live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. at talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back, folks, to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauber. I'm an employment law and business law attorney. I'm here tonight with my guest, Lisa Snow. Lisa is the founder of On the Mend Customized Fitness and Massage. And we're really having a great conversation tonight, Lisa. I really appreciate your being on the show with us this evening.
Thanks. Yeah. It's exciting. You have a great audience.
Sure thing. You know, we talked about a few things here to kind of to recap a bit. We identified some of the common factors that contribute to unhealthy lifestyle for employees, some of that work-life balance struggle, some of the isolation from the pandemic. Lisa identified some more concrete challenges of continuous sitting and lack of hydration. We got into some of the factors for how to promote wellness amongst your employees and what to consider, logistics and liability issues. And so I figured with all this great knowledge, I'm sure you must apply it to your clients. So my question for you is, how does your company, or how does On the Mend Fitness distinguish itself from other employee wellness and fitness programs? Like, what unique philosophy or approach do you apply when you to help employers and employees to live their best lives?
One really unique thing for us is that we're open to any size companies, and kind of our sweet spot is 20 to 200 employees, but honestly, no business is too small. And so many wellness providers are really focused on people with hundreds of employees. And so when we sit down with HR leaders and owners and CEOs, COOs, many of those leaders in smaller companies have never even thought about doing a wellness program before because they just didn't think it was available or accessible to them. Another big thing is that we really focus on team building through wellness. The goal isn't just to get people to sweat or get people to burn calories, it's to get them to have a shared experience. So whether that's more of an interactive class, and we'll get to that in a second, or whether it's just kind of a traditional workout class with the music going, we want people to show up at work the next day, whether that's in their office or on Zoom. Gosh, those push-ups were murder, and have that shared experience, right? Or, oh, I haven't stretched my shoulders in so long. I didn't realize they needed this much help, but they did. It was so nice to actually have that experience. So, we want them to have fun together. We want them to sometimes complain together because that's part of the fun.
Sure.
And, for them to have done something at the same time. So all of our Zoom-based classes, they're not YouTube videos, they're live. So even though the students are just seeing the instructor, we're seeing the students. We really, really, really encourage people to leave their video on. So part of that is the safety reason, right? We want to make sure they're not tripping and falling. We want to make sure they understood what the exercises are. And, just having people have their video on just brings the energy of the group way, way up.
Right.
So we do some traditional wellness programs, whether that's lunch and learn lectures about exercise and nutrition and stress management. For companies that are back in person, we have a massage therapist who can do on-site chair massage. I'm not a therapist, I'm a personal trainer, but we do have a licensed massage therapist. And so that's kind of some of the traditional employee wellness elements that are kind of timeless that we've kept. But we've also created a lot of new programs because of the lockdown. So what we kept hearing from people was just isolation, stress, burnout. And we thought, how can we recreate those fun conversations that people used to have at the water cooler, at the cappuccino machine, at dinner after work. So I created a half-hour chair stretch class that's very, very low key. So, again, it could be someone with a button down like Eric's wearing. It could be someone a little more casual like the sweater I'm wearing. It doesn't matter. They could be in the class together. But for Stretch and Chat, we have people with their videos on and unmuted. And we have discussion prompts. So it's all about taking that old school water cooler chat and giving it an active twist. So it's not just a happy hour where people are chit-chatting. They're actually sitting and stretching out their arms or stretching out their wrists or, physically getting moving. But it's not a cardio class, right? People aren't winded. They're still going to be able to talk. And hopefully they're going to feel like they're actually together even when they can't be.
Yeah. That's an interesting idea, having that, that low impact, they can actually, still have conversations, they can still talk. And as you mentioned, you can be wearing a blazer. By the way, thank you for the couple of shout outs to my button shirt and blazer today. I appreciate the props, I'll say, but thank you. But then you can be, say dressed in whatever, fashion and still participate and have that conversation piece. Yeah, I think it's really important to have the socialization, the social element, right? Because that's what makes it fun. And I think it has to be fun for people to want to continue doing whatever it is, so that's interesting. Like you having the chair stretching and the video on so you can see people and coach them through. It's funny because I was going to mention earlier, wondering if people turn off the video so they don't feel self-conscious, but then again, you can't see what they're doing. You can't see if they're stretching too high or gonna hurt their neck or something along those lines. So interesting.
I think everyone is self-conscious working out in front of their coworkers. I think that's human nature.
Yeah.
But part of the shutdown is that we're now all beginners together, right? So you have people who before the shutdown were at the gym 8 days a week. We have employees who before the shutdown maybe hadn't been back to a gym for 15 or 20 years.
Right.
And if you were starting a brand new wellness program in, let's say, 2018 or 2019, those people would have been in a yoga class in an empty conference room together, right? And, today, obviously, there are still employees with different health challenges and different fitness levels. But for many people, many teams, no one has been back to a gym for 2 years.
Right.
So it's kind of, everyone is starting fresh and just getting back into their bodies and back into their breath. And
excellent.
A little less scary about that.
Excellent, Lisa. Yeah, for all great points. We've got only about 2.5 minutes left, so I want to turn the microphone over to you to share how can we contact you, any promotions coming up, any events. The floor is yours.
So as Eric mentioned, the company is On the Mend. So that's onthemendfitness.com. If you have questions, you can certainly follow me on LinkedIn. You can check out my website. And for people who want to talk about their own teams and how we can help, my cell is 914-563-3026. And again, the website was onthemendfitness.com. All one word, no dashes.
Wonderful. It's great to have your information, your contact website, and all that good stuff. It's really helpful. So, well, first off, I want to thank you for being here tonight, taking the time out of your schedule to talk about this important topic. I hope that people really got something out of it, that they realize that, fitness, it can happen in stages, incrementally. You can do it from home. You don't necessarily need to be at a gym if you're not comfortable there. In fact, actually, I'm going to the gym after this. I'm actually feeling kind of tired today, and it's really hitting me, but I want to keep those workouts consistent. And I think this show tonight has helped me to commit to that. So I want to thank you for that reason too. Also want to just, again, give a shout out to you and your company and what you're doing for people during these challenging times. So, and with that, I want to just also give a nod to the station and note that you're listening to Employment Law Today. I'm here every Tuesday night, folks, from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. on Talk Radio NYC. Tune into the station. You can watch us live on Facebook. You can listen to the website. For more interesting guests, we'll talk about employment and business issues. But once again, I want to give it up and say thank you, Lisa Snow of On the Mend Customized Fitness and Massage. Have a wonderful night, and thank you again.
Thank you, Eric, for having me. And thank you to all the leaders out there that are paying attention to this and this type of content and really caring that your employees feel well.
Yes, wonderful. So stay tuned to the station for Gateway to the Smokies with Joseph Franklin McElroy at 6 p.m. And we're wishing everyone a happy, safe, healthy, and wellness balanced rest of the week and day. And you know where to reach Lisa and how to reach her if need be. So once again, just thank you so much and have a good night.